Hello everyone, this is Shruti Mishra and I welcome you all to the video interview session of ET Auto. Indian tire manufacturers have been on a bumpy road from the past 1.5 years because of the poor auto sales and the outbreak of coronavirus. On the show today, joining us is Mr. Nitin Mantri, Chairman of Yokohama India, who will share his views on the challenges faced by the Indian tire manufacturers and what's the way ahead. Mr. Mantri, a warm welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we'll start with a fairly broad question. If we look at the tire production in FY20, it contracted by almost 8%, something which happened in the like something which we have seen, which we haven't seen in the past 7 years. So, as per you, what led to such steep decline, and how the coronavirus outbreak is changing the dynamics of Indian tire industry?
So we were starting to see some headwinds even 6 to 9 months ago because of the NBFCs, because of the overall economic situation of India. We were not seeing as much growth as we were anticipating in Indian market. And starting, I would say, in March, especially after the lockdown, the whole scenario completely changed. I think the month of April, there was a period of about 45 days where we sold not just Yokohama, but the entire industry sold zero tires. That's completely unheard of. Even now, when things are starting to open up, we have pockets opening and shutting at the same time. And that's not really very conducive to having uh, continuity in production or selling. So this has been maybe the biggest disruption we have seen in Indian automotive industry in the last 10 or 20 years. And we still don't know what the repercussions would be for the rest of the year.
So earlier this month, Yokohama India commenced the manufacturing operations at its Bahadurgarh plant in Haryana. So, considering that, I just wanted to ask you, how do you think, what's the demand scenario look like at the present? Do you think that there is going to be some kind of significant pent up demand coming in going forward? And if yes, then in what segment do you think that that pent up demand is going to bring some kind of impact in terms of sales?
In a way, I would say there is not of a pent up demand because when you purchase a car, when I look at our OE side, it's not a it's not a consumable, right? So if you haven't really bought a car for the 3 months, doesn't mean that you're going to go out, run to the showrooms and start buying cars. So I think our hope is that things come back to the normal run rate that were going on like year 2 years ago. That's one. The second piece is when we look at the aftermarket, we we expect a shift. So we expect a shift to smaller cars. So a lot of people may be uncomfortable traveling in locals, so buses and so on. So they might by buying like a Alto or Santo type of cars. There might be huge demand for the second-hand cars that people can afford. So we see there is a shift going from people using locals, buses, or even for that matter, Uber, trying to get their own protective cars. So that may create more demand for both second-hand cars and small autos. So from an OE point of view, we see a shift towards smaller size tires, let's say 12-inch, 13-inch. And from aftermarket point of view, that may be a boon because when you buy a second-hand cars, sooner or later you will have to change the tires. So with these two factors, we expect some demand to be coming in these segments.
So, Mr. Mantri, correct me if I'm wrong. Your current market share is around 7% in India, close to 7%. So, going forward, considering the current situation that we are in and the auto industry projections that the stalwarts of the industry is projecting some kind of sluggishness in the market in the coming months, how do you think that your how do you plan your growth plans? Like, what's the way ahead for your company specifically?
So as of now, I think the number you share might be incorrect. Have about 4.2% market share
Okay.
in Indian market, and our goal is to get to 6%. So one is the market is growing, so we'll grow with the market, but we also would like to gain share to be about 50% higher than what we are today. And the way we are trying to do it is on multiple fronts. we are looking at new products. So we are launching a new product called Blue Earth One. That is a global launch. So it's not some second-hand product. It's a brand new product that Yokohama will be launching in almost all parts of the world, and India would be one of the launch sites. We are also looking at channels. So we have about 1,500 channel partners in India today. We are trying to add more and more. We have a strong presence in tier one markets. Our next phase would be getting to tier two and tier three markets. So these are the multiple things that we're trying to do to increase our market share and become a significant player in the Indian market.
Okay. And is there any timeline that you want to put forward for achieving that 6% of market share?
About 5 years from now. So that's our 2025 plan.
2025. All
Yeah.
right. Now, if we consider the operations of Yokohama India with the Yokohama in the other countries, so how do you think, how crucial is the Indian market to the overall Yokohama Rubber Group company?
That's a great question. I think Yokohama thinks of India as one of the growth markets. So when they look at their main markets, that would be home market in Japan, of course, but then US is a big market for them. China is a huge market for them. And then I would say India would be significant. Part of that is because of the quality image and the history that we have created, the Japanese OEMs. We support our key OEMs like Honda, Toyota, Suzuki, all over the world. And in India, we are there to also support them and also using that as a starting position to go to other Indian OEMs and also in aftermarket. When we think about India, the penetration of passenger cars is still very low compared to the kind of developed markets. So we see huge growth in auto population, and along with that, we hope to ride on to that to get to our number. One important factor for Yokohama that is pretty interesting is that we initially launched a tire for a year or two. That was a global tire that did not do that well. But then we launched something called Earth One, which is our main tire for Indian market, which is designed for India, considering Indian driving conditions in mind. And that has been doing fabulous. So this is a big commitment from a Japanese company to design something specifically for this market. And after 5, 6 years on the road, we are very happy with how that's performing. And we expect similar new products coming towards Indian market.
So, Mr. Mantri, if you can give us a sense of like what's the current capacity of your Bahadurgarh plant and how you want to notch up to that production level in the coming years.
So when we started by about 2,000 tires per day. So about 7.5 lakhs tire per year. That's our capacity for phase one. We are just finishing phase two. So I would say at this point, we are close to 4,000 tires per day or 1.5 lakhs tire per year. I think that's a pretty decent size capacity. We have another 2 phases to go. So we have that much space in our plant for future expansion. So we can double that to go up to about 8 to 10,000 tires per day. So we'll see how the market is evolving. And based on that, we will have a structured growth program to match up our growth with the market growth.
All right. So when we are talking about doubling up the production volumes, so what kind of investments you are trying to put in to the Indian markets, and within the automotive segment, which I would say, which sub-segment are you focusing on, whether it be the cars or the or something on the agri side? What's your focus area is going to be?
So in terms of the capital and capacity we're putting in, we have a state-of-the-art facility, maybe as advanced as anything out there in the world. And as we go forward, we have the best processes and also the quality control systems that justify the Yokohama branding on the side of the tire balls. When we think about the segments that we're going to grow into, worldwide, Yokohama is known for two extremes. One is the SUV tires. So if you all the way from the Jeep in the US to even for Indian marketplace, we have a dual underline that has been very popular. And the other extreme would be we are very well known worldwide for sports car tires. So we are OE on Porsche and BMW and other sports cars. So these two areas we definitely would like to dominate in India. But SUV segment is growing, so we see a lot of growth there. But the sports car segment is not that big in India. That is very small niche segment. So in order to survive in this pretty challenging market, we are expecting a full spectrum, all the way from 12-inch to close to 18, 19-inch tires that we are planning to sell into Indian market. Today we go from 13 to 17, and as the market grows, we will go into 18 and 19 also.
Mr. Mantri, lately we have seen that Indian government has imposed some kind of restrictions on both on the raw material as well as on the finished goods as well. So, what kind of sense are you getting from the government? Do you think that how do you think that this kind of imports restrictions on the natural rubber and on the import of tires is going to impact the overall tire industry?
Okay, so I may be a contrarian on this particular topic. So taking the tires from kind of regular import into the restricted zone, I think might make sense for import from, let's say, China. So the tires that are imported into India, I would say that nearly 70, 80% are coming from China, and most of them are in the low end. These are the 12 to 14-inch cheaper tires. And the pricing in that segment is pretty messed up because the way Chinese price their tires into India. I think if the government decide to shut that down because of protecting the Indian industry and also maybe punish Chinese for the way they are creating on the border, I think that's a different story altogether. But creating a wholesale restriction on any kind of passenger tires into India may not be very helpful to the Indian tire industry in the long term, because we are forgetting that when we import, we also export, right? India exports close to 12,000 crores worth of tires outside. And if every country in the world starts doing made in Thailand, made in America, made in Europe, and nothing else, then the whole world will be filled with islands and we can't really trade with each other. That may not be very beneficial in the long term. So on one side, I'm happy for the short-term benefits that all the Indian manufacturers are going to see in terms of kind of filling up their capacities and coming out of this coronavirus-induced downturn pretty fast. But I also worry that in the medium to long term, the impact of that on global trade and how other countries are going to react to these restrictions that India is putting on imports.
So, talking about the export market, at present, many companies, many tire makers are seeing exports as a de-risk factor when the domestic market is under turmoil. So, what's your stand on that? And I just wanted to know, like, how much unit are you exporting to the nearby Asian countries or to the other countries, or what's your plan ahead eh, in terms of exports? Like, what kind of business are you seeing from there?
So from a passenger car point of view, we have no plans of exporting tires out of India. So when we Yokohama decided to put a plant here, that was mainly to meet the domestic India manufacturing capacity. We have a plant in Thailand, we have a plant in Philippines, we have a plant in Vietnam. So these are great plants that are supporting the worldwide exports that Yokohama does. So Indian plant from day one, the idea was to support only the domestic Indian market. So at this point, we have no plans. All the capacity, current and future, would be for the local market. Uh, uh, it's a sidebar, but I run another company that Yokohama owns out of India, which is ATG Tires. And this company exports nearly 90% of their goods outside. So we export close to 4,000 crores worth of tires out of India. So on one side, as a chairman of Yokohama India, I'm telling you I'm happy. On the other side, as a head of ATC Tire, I'm extremely unhappy with the tire import restrictions.
Right now, currently, if we look at the overall automotive market, everybody is anticipating some kind of revival in the September quarter. As for you, when do you think that the tire industry will be able to see that silver lining? And if we talk about the segment wise, if you can give us an idea about which segment do you think will be able to, see the maximum demand or the fastest demand of tires in the coming time?
I think that's a tough question to answer, mainly because most of us don't really know how and when the coronavirus situation is going to evolve. My personal view is that until all of us get vaccinated, which may be end of the year or early part of next year, we can't say that we are back to normal. So when like I live in Mumbai and I'm been locked down in my house, I just counting exactly 3 months today, and I am not sure whether I or anybody that I know is in the mood to go out and buy um, a brand new car. And most of us are not even driving our cars as often. So when you think through that scenario, when you're doing work from home, most of us are trying to figure out how to be more productive in the current scenario. So even the driving might be down for the next kind of 3 to 9 months till people really feel comfortable getting out of the house and so on. So my view is that things will be tight till at least end of the year. I don't see as much revival in the September quarter as you indicated earlier. I mentioned earlier in the interview that two segments I see to be attractive are one is the smaller cars, where people are moving from public transportation to private transportation. Many of them maybe even first time buyers of cars. So that segment should start seeing quite a bit of upside, maybe starting now and definitely in the September quarter. Also, the second hand or used cars that could be attractive too. But other than these two segments, I don't see much of pickup between now till end of the year.
So, lastly, Mr. Mantri, I just wanted to know that recently many of the traders' body of crucial, important ones are completely boycotting the Chinese products, and they are urging people to boycott the Chinese product, they boycott the business with the Chinese firms. So, just wanted to know how much dependency you have in terms of raw materials on the Chinese market. Like any of your import is dependent on the Chinese market.
So Yokohama has a really good strategy. So we have a dual sourcing strategy for all of our components or raw material. So at this point, we may have some sourcing out of China, but we always would have a dual source in some other part of the world. We were anticipating some country risk and logistical risk and so on. So we always keep 2 or 3 suppliers for all of our products. So personally, I don't really worry too much about boycotting of or the government restrictions on importing something from China. I think uh, the part I think many of us miss is that as a consumer, we all see Chinese products, Chinese phones, a lot of kind of finished goods that you and I buy. What we don't see is if you really go to a deep down supply chain, even third or fourth level down, that's when a lot of stuff is Chinese that you and I are not even aware of. You know what I mean? So you can see a certain product, but that product may be made in India and its supplier could be somewhere in Thailand, but that Thailand person's supplier is from China. So we just need to be really careful about what exactly are we banning because we can ban stuff from China, but the stuff always goes and comes back to us. I'll give one example. US put a lot of duties on Chinese tires about 3, 4 years ago. And guess what? Most of these Chinese companies then opened their operations. They put brand new factories in Thailand, Vietnam, and they are exporting. So there was a lull for 2 years in US, but now most of the Chinese tires are back. They're just called made in Thailand or made in Vietnam. It's very strange. And I think same thing might happen here because it's very hard to figure out country of origin if stuff can be rerouted through Southeast Asia.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mantri, for sharing your valuable insights with these ET Auto.